Hello everyone! Welcome back to my YouTube, and today we are talking about all the things that you need to know before you go into making a niche zine. So if you didn't know, my name is Jade. My handle online is Jaded Island. It is also my author name / artist name, and I recently launched this really amazing magazine publication, which will now be biannual, so 2 a year, and that magazine is called Jaded, and it is an alternative fashion and lifestyle magazine. But of course, one of my inspirations for creating this magazine was that I'm very inspired by not only just traditional media and print, but I really loved Gothic Lolita, Kira, and I wanted a fashion magazine that encompassed the things that I love about magazines, but also storytelling and the visual way that we can communicate ideas and just my love of alternative fashion as a whole. The first issue was themed for Lovecore, and each corresponding issue after this will have its own separate theme, which will be broken down into sub-themes, which will also kind of, I guess, set the tone for what each issue will be about and what will be inside of that content. And so there will always be an opportunity to share something that you love within alternative fashion and lifestyle, and it'll vary from person to person, from theme to theme. But let's not talk about the nitty-gritty of like what makes Jaded something that I'm very passionate about. Let's talk about what you can do as someone who is interested in creating a zine or just jumping into the world of traditional media and print. So number one, I'm a published author, and this is now technically my third publication, and I'm actually in the works of a fourth right now. But we'll talk about that secret project later. And right now I want to talk about the things that you should keep in mind before stepping into a big project like this. First, I want you to be mindful of the accounting involved for a project of this size. One of the things that I am tremendously grateful for is that I have an accounting friend. I have a few actually, but the person who supported me the most for the project of Jaded was my friend Rondrega, and she is one of the best accountants in the Louisiana area, and she really helped me not have as much anxiety about what I would need in order to produce the magazine and kind of like realize the reality of what this project would be. Self-publishing in general is a very costly endeavor, and I definitely learned this the first time when I published my chapbooks. But there are things you have to keep in mind when it comes to thinking about what your cost might look like. It'll be, number one, researching what places are going to actually print your zine, to know how many test prints or mock-ups you might need, and each time you do a test print or mock-up, that's also going to cost you money. You need to know about ISBN codes so that when someone looks at your magazine, they can scan the code and look it up online so that it actually populates on the internet and in, like, you know, library systems and things like that. Keep in mind what software you might be using. Things like Adobe can be pretty pricey. There are alternatives online to Adobe, but like Adobe InDesign is something that I also used for the magazine. I also did a lot of editing stuff on Microsoft. I've used Notion. I'm actually kind of spread out when it comes to the platforms I actually use for producing the first volume of Jaded, but there are so many options out there online, but you need to keep in mind what those costs are going to be for you when you are planning this magazine. Another thing to keep in mind is whether or not you are going to be paying for this all out of pocket, or if you're going to crowdfund, for instance. I used Kickstarter to crowdfund the first issue of the magazine. I'm unsure right now if I'm going to continue to do something similar for each issue, but I do believe that the pre-order method is probably the best, so that you are not doing an excessive amount of printing for a magazine that might not be in as demand as other publications. And my hope going forward is that when I am printing each volume, that like each issue is its own experience, and that's something that I'm putting effort into doing. But that's another cost that I have to keep in mind, how much it'll cost to print the magazine. To pay for 100 copies of the magazine runs me about $1,900 from the publisher that I'm using right now, and that's kind of a that's kind of a pricey thing to do, right? And there were obviously more than 100 people who have gotten my first issue of the magazine, and will probably be like that each issue. So knowing that cost was very important to how I will navigate the pricing for this endeavor going forward. And then there are also other platforms that cost money, and that's something to keep in mind. The second thing, I know this video is going to be like dumb long, but like stick with me please. The second thing is, if you are looking to have people contribute to your magazine, make sure that you have all the information that they might need, which includes their deadlines, what requirements are needed for either their photo content, their written content, and have all of that put together ahead of time, please. One of the things that I had was I had a vision board that helped with navigating like what the themes of the content was. I also had a media kit for the magazine that accompanied me doing proposals and pitches to guest artists and people I wanted to interview for the magazine. When you're thinking about your requirements, make sure you know what your magazine specs are. Mine, for instance, is 8.5 by 11. And that's something that you'll need to have accessible for you when people think about like what sort of art they want to contribute or what photo things they want, the photo size, the resolution. All that information needs to be together ahead of time when you are interacting with people who are contributing or sponsoring or being like a guest artist in your magazine. The third thing that I want you to think about too is that when it comes to the zine, it is a project, and that requires project management. If you are working solo, you need to know how much you need to outsource. If you are working with a small team, learn how to delegate tasks, learn how to be more upfront about your needs, follow up with guest artists or guest writers or guest contributors, check in with sponsors and the content, let them know where you are in the process. Follow up, follow up, follow up. That is definitely a key thing for making a zine. And then the last thing is, if you are someone who's looking to get a sponsorship for your zine, if when it comes to the production costs or even how you're putting it out in the world, think about how much you want to fund the magazine yourself. And if you are pushing for sponsorships, think about how that would work with some smaller brands. Think about what opportunities like grants and things with your local government work. I know that I'm in the process of applying to grants myself right now, and make sure you put aside a very, I wouldn't say small, but like put aside a budget for marketing, because putting the word out there that your magazine is in existence, that your zine is like ready to be consumed by the, you know, the general public is important. Marketing is also half the battle. If people don't know about your magazine, no one's gonna buy your magazine, no one's gonna be interested in reading your magazine or like consuming it, you know? And then I need you to also establish whether or not your contributors are going to get like a small payment for their contribution, or if they're going to be compensated for their work in some aspect. One of the things that's been the most frustrating about my experience with contributing to other zines is that sometimes those zines don't even offer a copy of the magazine to me as a contributor. I actually hate that model and method, so I wanted to make sure that when I was doing my zine, contributors would get a small payment for their work, their contribution. They also get the PR package that came with the magazine for people who supported it, and then additionally they get a copy of the magazine, because I want you to have, you know, the fruits of your labor, if that makes sense. And then the last thing is be mindful of your time. It took me about 7 months in real time to put together the first volume of the magazine. I'm going to be faster the next time because now I have the experience, but being mindful of how much time that you are investing to create this project, this production, is important. You also need to consider how much you need to learn for this project. If you have experience with publications, that will give you obviously a little buffer, or if you're someone who is drawing or writing for the magazine itself, that experience also helps. But like, it is a very big time investment outside of the financial investment, and that's something to keep in mind when it comes to thinking about what type of publication you're putting together. So don't knock having a digital magazine either. I think digital magazines are also amazing and wonderful, and those can be done very well. One of the things that's great about Jaded is that even if you don't get a copy of the print edition, the digital will be forever on my website, and I will link that below. But this is all to say, this is what you need to get started. Aesthetics, the content, The themes, that's all on you. That's all your creativity and all your planning, and I do think it's possible. I want to see more traditional media in niche spaces, and I want to see storytelling in every facet, in every area of life that I'm in or interacting in. And I'm excited to be a part of the zine making community, as well as being someone who is an editor for this magazine. And as someone who does project management, this has been a very fun creative challenge for me, but it's also been something for me to learn from. I've learned so many new skills in the process of doing my own zine that I just wanted to put together a video talking about what you need to know, what I learned, what I wish I knew about, before going into a big project of this size. And please don't be afraid to ask for friends or people that you know for help or thoughts or feedback. I would love to offer myself up as a resource. If you want to schedule time to chat about it, or like shoot me a message or DM or comment, that's fine. I'm here to help my community first, of course. And if you are a person of color or in a marginalized community, you shoot me a message if you want to hear more about it, about my experiences with contributing to zines, and then also now creating my own. This video was informational so that you guys could look back at this as a reference point for what it takes to make a zine and what I've learned through this process. I can't wait for people to see my zine in person, and I will see you guys the next time. Oh, how could I forget? Let me show you. Zhazhang! Will I be seeing you in the magazine space, or will you be my next contributor or guest artist and writer for my magazine?